Hi everyone, welcome back. My name's Tim. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do a book review of a very, very, very long book. So hopefully the review won't be as long as the book, because if it was, we'd all die of old age. That book is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. So this edition, my wife bought me. It's beautiful. You see, you've got Cosette on the front. You have the streets of Paris on the back. And then the end pages are absolutely gorgeous. This edition is 1,264 pages, which is a lot. And the text is very, very, very small. Also lined with gold. This is the most beautiful book I own, in fact. I started reading this in June 2019, a whole pandemic ago, and I finished it just before the end of the year. It was one of my goals in 2023 to finish this book, and I managed it. Was it incredible? Yes. Was it also hard work? Yes. And I've been putting off doing a review of this for a while. One, because it was Christmas and there was loads of stuff going on, so I didn't have time. But also, I still haven't quite got my thoughts together on this. So, a bit of context. I'm a big musical theatre fan, and Les Mis is one of my favourite shows. I auditioned for it as a kid. I auditioned to be Gavroche, and I've seen it a handful of times. When I was about 10, I got really addicted to the soundtrack and just listened to the soundtrack over and over again. And yeah, it's one of my favourite shows, but I never read the book. And now I can say I have. So this book was written in 1862, but it's set in 1832. It's set 30 years before, where France was between revolutions. So you had Napoleon came in, I want to say like 1799, something like that, 1800. And then Napoleon ruled for a long time, and then he'd been defeated and had gone to exile, and I think he died at that point. But we are now in a new king is on the throne. And then in 1832, and then I think just afterwards that king abdicates, and then a second republic comes in, and then that republic is taken over by Napoleon's nephew, who ends up naming himself emperor again, and then he's defeated, and then France goes back to a king again, and then some more stuff happens. So, a real tumultuous time for the French people, and this book is about revolution, it's about class, it's about hope, it's about love, it's about what makes a man. But I do think the main thing that it's about is from the title, and it's about the inequalities in life. And I just want to read the preface to this, which is from Victor Hugo himself. Also, this was translated by Isabel Hopgood. That's what this translation is. So, here we go, the preface, just explaining what the book is about and why it needs to exist. So long as there shall exist, by virtue of law and custom, decrees of damnation pronounced by society, artificially creating hells amid the civilization of earth, and adding the element of human fate to divine destiny. So long as the three great problems of the century, the degradation of man through pauperism, the corruption of women through hunger, the crippling of children through lack of light, are unsolved, so long as social asphyxia is possible in any part of the world. In other words, and with a still wider significance, so long as ignorance and poverty exist on earth, books of the nature of Les Miserables cannot fail to be of use. I think, looking at the world today, we still need this book. We still need this story. So, what is this? What is Les Mis about? It's about the political times in France at that period. I would say France is almost a character in this, but you can see the idea of revolution in this story through Marius as a character, through his relationship with his grandfather. You see Marius flip-flop between being a royalist and then being a republican. You see Enjolras leading this revolution on the barricades. It's about great things. It's also about very, very small things. This book is split into 5 volumes. Each volume is the size of a large novel. And the first volume isn't about the revolution. It isn't about the barricades. It's about a woman who falls in love. It's about Fantine. And she is poor, very poor. And then she falls in love with someone from the bourgeoisie. And him and his group of friends take her in, and her friends, and they take them in. And she's seeing this other side of Paris that she's never seen before. She's seeing nice things. And then she gets pregnant, and he completely drops her. He completely ditches her, and she has nothing. And now she has a baby. And he has no consequences for this. Him and all of his friends just disappear and leave the women behind. Leave the women in their poverty to raise children in poverty. And it's pretty harrowing. Fantine, she has to sell everything. Her teeth, her hair, her body, to try and make ends meet, to keep her daughter, Cosette, alive. Eventually she decides, she's convinced to send Cosette to a family called the Thénardiers. And she pays the Thénardiers to look after her child. Because she's not able to. And eventually, Jean Valjean, who is the main character in Les Mis, goes and finds her and promises to look after Cosette. And then Fantine dies. So, the first volume is about Fantine and her struggles. And it shows the through line of poverty and what poverty can do. The second volume is titled Cosette. And it's about Cosette growing up in the Thénardier household. We see Marius for the first time. We also follow Marius and his family history involving Napoleon and Waterloo. And then we find out that Marius's father was a general in Napoleon's army and was saved from a grievous wound by a man called Thénardier. So Marius, eventually, he thinks his father is dead. He finds out his father was alive, and owes his life to Thénardier. So he makes himself, I need to find Thénardier. I need to repay this life debt. And we see Cosette growing up in the Thénardier household until she is eventually found by Jean Valjean and rescued. Ultimately, stolen is another word that you could use, from the Thénardiers by Jean Valjean. The third volume is about Marius. So you see he's now growing up, and you see how he interacts with Cosette. This is a story about hope and love, and their love is so pure, like it's preposterous how pure it is, and they spend months not even looking at each other because they can't, because they're too perfect and all. It's very romantic. It's romanticized. It's very over the top. And you get a lot more on Marius finding the ABC, finding these revolutionaries, and Marius is so poor that he doesn't mind, and he has the same coat for years on end, and it's battered, but he can't afford a new one. And then You have Volume 4, which is about the revolution. It's about the barricades. It's about fighting. But it's about so much more. Everything I'm going to say is it's about so much more. And then the final volume is about Jean Valjean, and it's about Marius and Cosette getting together. It's about Javert and Jean Valjean catching up again. It's about Jean Valjean saving Marius and the eventual end. And I was teary at the end. So that's the kind of the story of it, but oh my goodness, it's about so much more. So it's about class, it's about hope and love. It's about what makes a man. So you have Jean Valjean, who is an ex-convict. He, at the start of the book, he is a villain for a very brief period. He is a villain. He steals, he threatens, he's very physically imposing, and he uses that to his advantage. And then he's being hunted by Javert throughout the whole story. And then Jean Valjean decides to change his ways and does, and moves to a different town under a new name and becomes very rich and becomes the mayor of the town and a pillar of the community and a helper, and he helps people. And Javert is still hunting him because he's an ex-convict, and ex-convicts cannot be good people. That's like Javert's, like that's the pillar of his personality, of his consciousness, of his, it's the foundation to who he is. And then you see Javert constantly hounding Jean Valjean, and Jean Valjean continuing to be a good man, and Javert cannot cope with it until they have their final confrontation. And Jean Valjean has Javert in his sights, and he doesn't take the shot, and Javert realizes that his whole foundation of personality is crumbled. This book is, as the preface says, it's about the poor in Paris. It's about the Thénardiers, who are now poor, scrounging, being villainous, being criminals, because they think they have no choice. But they do, but they think they don't. And you see their daughter, Eponine, who becomes a key character, and their son that they just abandon. They have a son that they just abandon and forget about completely. In so that after a few years, this little boy on the street, a boy known as Gavroche, meets Thénardier, and they don't recognize each other because their family has broken down due to the fact that they couldn't afford to feed their children, so they just released them. And there's this whole group of street children, a whole generation of street children in Paris. And Gavroche kind of represents them, both with their pluck and their charm and their knowledge on how to survive far beyond their years. The prose in this, originally by Victor Hugo, translated by Isabel Hapgood. Parts, you can almost open any page and read something. It is the same with wretchedness as it is with everything else. It ends by becoming bearable. It finally assumes a form and adjusts itself. One vegetates, that is to say. One develops in a certain meagre fashion that is, however, sufficient for life. This is the mode in which the existence of Marion Pontmercy was arranged. Just picked up a page and read it randomly. It's beautiful. It's dense. It hammers home points again and again and again, and it repeats. There's a whole one paragraph lasts like 4 pages as Javert, Jean Valjean finds a criminal and berates him and tells him to turn his life around. But it's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever met. It's a stream of consciousness from the author. It's the history of France. It's the history of the French people, and it's everything. The translation is very good, I think. I did read this on the Kindle as well, because this book is just too big to hold. So I did finish it off on the Kindle, and so it's not just the physical quality of the book that impressed me so much. Sorry, I need to sneeze. There we go. And I think this is such an important book for fighting for the poor and fighting for the small that I think it needs to be a 5-star read from me. But this is a slog. There are so many diversions of thought that Victor Hugo wants to talk about here. We get a 50-page history of the Battle of Waterloo. We get 50-plus pages at the start of the history of a bishop who his only key role is to allow Jean Valjean to steal from him. Right at the peak of the story, right at the climax, we have Jean Valjean rescues Marius and dives into the sewers. And this is like really page-turning because will he survive? What will happen? And then we get 50 pages on the history of sewers in Paris. Right at the climax. There's the history of the house, the story of the past 5 generations that lived in a house that now Jean Valjean and Cosette live in. Like, why is this book so long? This book does not need to be this long. This book could be a third of the length. A third of the length, and still tell a very rich story full of rich characters. But it's not. It's not. And I kind of don't want it to be, because all of the streams of consciousness and thought and history and politicizing, and that's what makes it Les Mis. It's not just the story. It's not just the characters. It's the writer expressing themselves on something that they truly believe in. And I honestly think that is what makes this stand the test of time. That's what makes this book so important to the history of France and the French people. It's about equality, liberty, fraternity. It's about Paris. It's about France. And without it, without all those paths that lead to nowhere, without the fact that the history of characters that we never see again, without breaking down the utter history and the story of a building in Paris, we don't get this book. So, is this a 5-star read from me? I think it has to be yes. Would I recommend it to people to read? No. Would I ever read it again? No. Am I really happy that I have read it and I understand, I think I understand what it's about and what it's trying to say? Yes. Do I think this is one of the most important books ever written? As a champion for the poor, the downtrodden, the hungry, the children without light. Yes. Yes, I do. And I think that's why it's taken me so long to put my thoughts together in a very long, rambly video. And I hope you enjoy it. Yeah. That's Les Mis. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going insane. This book makes you go insane because it's so deep and so big. It's like diving into an ocean of words, and you can't really swim a lot of the time. But those are my thoughts. Those are some of my thoughts. Every day I wake up and I think of this book still, and what it means, and what it's about, and what it's trying to say, and the levels that it works on. So I think this book will stay with me forever. One, because I'm reading it on and off for 4 years, but also just on what it's about and what it's saying, and who it's fighting for. This book is fighting for people that don't have a voice. And 150, 160 years after it's been published, those people still need fighting for. So that's my review. I hope you enjoy it. Please give this video a like. Comment below on if you've read this book or if you've started it and given up. Or if you just like the show or any other huge books like this that you think I should possibly read. Anyway, so long. Au revoir. Get out of my house.